Welcome back to the Global Builder's Guide, episode 12. I'm Enigmius, and today we're continuing with the Cradle of Power build. I noticed as I was setting up to record that if you look at it from the right angles, it's actually pretty imposing. So we're starting from the ground and moving up just so we can kind of get a feel for the scope of the whole structure. It's sometimes a little bit difficult when we're looking down at it as we're building it to really appreciate just how large it is. It's big. It's very big. I forget how many, many stacks of cobblestone have gone into building it. And I noticed some people commented after the last episode that it's all cobblestone. It's not very interesting, and I agree it's not. But we have to remember that this is a prototype structure. This is not the final structure. This is basically being built so that when we get the survey routines done for our turtles, that we can set them free and let them survey the structure so that we can duplicate it elsewhere and swap in other materials that will be a little bit more interesting. Now, one of the things that kind of makes building something of this size with any degree of complexity a bit of a pain is working with materials like stone and glass, where if you set a block in the wrong spot, you either convert it to something else when you break it to relocate it, or you destroy it altogether, as is the case with glass. So as far as this goes, cobblestone is something that I have plenty of, and I also have plenty of dirt that I'll be using in place of glass throughout the structure when we get to that point. And that's just, again, for the prototyping, so that we can get things done without having to spend the rest of our lives gathering materials that we're just going to break anyways. So you can see we're adding kind of a dome-shaped roof. We'll call it a roof for now. It's not actually going to be the roof of the structure. It's actually going to be an aesthetic detail where we're going to intersect it with another shape so that it looks, I mean, right now it's a lot of rectangles sort of stacked together, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's also one of those things that I try to keep a lid on. Too many rectangles makes a structure look very plain and uninteresting to me. So we're going to break up the rectangles with sort of the exact opposite with the dome. One of the things that I noticed far too late is that one of the corners that we built in the last episode was the wrong size. It was 2 blocks too short on both sides. So when I was putting the domed section in and I got close to the corners, it looked like I had the domed section in the wrong spot, which meant I would have had to effectively move the whole dome over 1 block, which was kind of a daunting proposition. It's time consuming. Remember, this is time-lapse photography, so to speak. We're taking about 2 hours of build time and condensing it down into a little over 10 minutes worth of actual video footage. So at this point, we're well over half an hour into the build and realizing that if things keep going the way that they're going, we're going to have to relocate the entire dome. Kind of a pain in the butt. So that's actually what I started doing, and I spent a fair amount of time messing around with this or that, trying to get things to fit, seeing what I could correct in order to make things work. And because just the view that I was getting as I was moving around, the thought never occurred to me to check and see what was going on with the corners, whether or not they were the proper size, whether or not they were done properly. The end result was a lot of fiddling with something that didn't need to be fiddled with. I wouldn't say it's wasted time, because sometimes we have to learn these lessons the hard way, which is to say, check all your measurements before you start adding the next phase. Or at the very least, when you encounter a problem that makes it look like things aren't the proper size in one way or another, just check everything. Check everything and make sure that everything that's intersecting is the way that it's supposed to be, because I didn't do that. All I did was look at the domed section itself. I assumed everything else was the way it needed to be, and I was wrong. And it cost me about half an hour. Not the end of the world, but I could have done some other interesting things with that half hour. And it happens, especially with things of this nature, when we start getting into the complex shapes. Things kind of get overlooked. We get into autopilot mode for even just a short little span of time, and before you know it, the whole thing has gone to shit. We need to start tearing things down and fixing them. Up to this point, everything had been going smoothly until I realized the error of my ways. The corner was too small. But once I got it figured out, it was just a matter of extending the corner to the proper size, which didn't take much at all. You can see I'm still fiddling with it, breaking things, putting them back down in other places, trying to figure out exactly what's going to make it work. But once I got the corner fixed, everything fit properly, everything worked the way that it was supposed to, and it was really not all that bad. I would have been more unhappy with myself if I had actually just demolished the entire roof and started over, because I would have encountered the same problem. Plus the added frustration of realizing that I wrecked something that I didn't have to in order to try and fix something that didn't get fixed. But it's starting to look like a dome. It's got kind of a wonky thing going on in the roof section in the very middle. If I was actually planning on using this as a roof, I would have to go back and rework that whole sort of central area, because it just doesn't look like a dome. It looks like it's trying to be a dome, but it's got some pieces that just aren't fitting properly, I guess would be the best way to put it. You can see here, this is another example. If you look at that central area in the top, it would require a little bit of work, but we're basically going to be intersecting it with a large rectangle and clearing out that whole center area. So yes, I am building this dome knowing in advance that basically most of it is going to get destroyed when we get to the intersecting part of it. And sometimes that's the best way for me to be able to look at it and say, okay, well, I did this part right, and now when I intersect with the rectangle, it's going to work out, as opposed to trying to put segments together and make them look like they're part of a larger whole that just happens to be interrupted by this other shape. It's just one of those things that works a certain way for me. Other people might be able to pull it off, but I'm not one of them. So you can see we're basically done. That gives you an idea. Again, even now, even more so than before, we can see how it's a little bit wonky in the middle there. And we could have, flattened it out, spread it out a little bit, fixed it if we wanted to keep the dome shape. But because we don't, I'm just going to finish off the other side, let things go the way they're going to go, and then as soon as I get the other side done and everything is looking the way you can see, I'm flying back and forth, double checking to make sure everything fits, making sure that everything is right and done with the dome, everything is lining up. This time we're going to check and make sure before we get started with anything else, and then we can flip around here. We can demand that the cameraman go elsewhere, and when he complies, we can start on the rectangle. So you can see I've also got a little bit of a square knockout in the rectangle. That's going to be for a tower that's going to extend way above the structure, because we are doing the whole computer craft wireless modem thing. And it makes sense that our main structure be able to help start the process of extending the range by putting a computer with a wireless modem way up on a tower. So that's what we'll do. And then you can see the rectangle is basically going in. We're putting in the walls. We haven't started knocking out the central area yet, but don't worry, that will be soon. And you can see it's very prominent now that there's something sticking up out of the roof. It's not a small intersection. It's actually, you can see very, very clearly that something is going on above and beyond the domed area. So by the time we finish getting this in, we start knocking out this central section. We've gone from a bunch of rectangles and squares stacked on top of each other to a domed roof to another rectangle cutting through the domed roof, but not extending all the way to the floor. That's the one thing that I realize I haven't even touched yet, is any kind of floor. We don't even have a ground level floor. It's still just grass and dirt and stone. But we'll get there. I'm capping off these corner units now because I realized just the way the shapes are going in. I was going to try and extend them up higher, but that's not really going to work. And that's fine. We're going to put some corner details in the new rectangle, but the other ones, cap them off. Kind of happy with the way things are going so far. Now you can see when we start cutting out the domed area, we've got this even more imposing structure. We've added definitely some more height to it, but we're also adding more usable space. And this is one of the things that I wanted to avoid. I've done structures in the past where I spent so much time on the aesthetics that I wound up with a ton of dead space inside, just because of the way things go together when you try and do curves and angles and things of that nature, that this time I wanted to make sure that the focus was on providing as much usable space as possible while still making it look different enough that people sit up and take notice. So given that we're not even done with the structure yet, we've still got some more aesthetic details we're going to be added. I think we're on the right track, but it's just a matter of making sure I've got enough cobblestone and dirt, and then coming around and finishing it off. So the next episode, we might be able to get the structure itself done, and then the walls, the episode after, Maybe. We'll see. It might be 2 more episodes still before we get the structure itself fully complete, and then the walls themselves will be easily another full episode. So we're just about done with the structure, but not quite. We're just about done with this episode. So, by all means, leave your comments and feedback in the comments section below. And if you want to be notified when I add the next video, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. So I hope you're enjoying, guys. Thanks for watching, and take care.